Hello, everyone. I am excited to be here today with Sergey Nazarov, the co-founder of Chainlink. Today, we are discussing the huge new news on the Chainlink Reserve, a strategic link token reserve. With that said, let's get started with some background and context. The Chainlink Reserve is a new upgrade centered around the strategic on-chain reserve of link tokens designed to support the long-term growth and sustainability of the Chainlink network through various avenues, which we will discuss in a moment. At launch, it was funded with over $1 million in Link, and there will be more gradually rolled out in the coming months as more revenue is converted into Link and placed into the reserve. It's also being built up via a payment abstraction that makes it possible to programmatically convert off-chain and on-chain revenue into Link. To start off, Sergey, this is a huge development. Congrats, first of all.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great new program. We're very
Yeah.
excited about it.
And I would love to ask you in your own words, can you tell us what is the Chainlink Reserve?
Sure. So the Chainlink Reserve is now a clear answer to the question of how does all of this adoption of Chainlink by enterprises of various sizes relate back to the protocol in the system in general. So Chainlink has had a lot of adoption on chain, powering the majority of DeFi on certain chains like Ethereum, powering over 80% of DeFi. And so we have a lot of on-chain adoption, and there's revenue generated by that on-chain adoption. There is also a substantial and growing amount of enterprise adoption, which is expressed in various off-chain deals that are for integration, implementation of Chainlink, maintenance, support, and various other key operations related to Chainlink adoption and the implementation of the Chainlink standards. So there's been a question of, hey, you have all this amazing enterprise adoption in various sizes of enterprises over many years. It's clearly accelerating. How does that relate back to the system? And so now we've reached a certain threshold in the amount of adoption that we see there. And we have the payment abstraction layer, allowing us to take both the on-chain revenue and the off-chain revenue and convert it into Link, and then put portions of it into different places in the system, including this new reserve. Mm-hmm. So what is really happening here is that you have a new program where you will have on-chain revenue flowing into the reserve, but very importantly now, you will also have off-chain revenue. So essentially revenue from those enterprise implementations, integrations, all of those kind of other things other than the on-chain side of the equation can now also be converted via payment abstraction and put into the system and made useful for the system. So right. This is I would say the big news, and really an answer that people have been searching for. We've been wanting to give them this answer for a while now, but we wanted to get to a place where you had the ability to do it technically, and you then also had a sufficient amount of off-chain revenue for the implementation, integration, maintenance, support of Chainlink standards adoption, that it made sense to do it. And so now we've reached that level.
Right. I think that explains very well what Chainlink Reserve is. I'm curious as well if we could dive into what led you to create the Chainlink Reserve, maybe the why. Why does it matter and like today?
So I think we've seen an increase in the amount of enterprise adoption that we're seeing for the Chainlink standard. We're seeing a lot of adoption for on-chain services and public chains, and we're seeing revenue from that. But realistically, the pricing of those things is sometimes optimized towards adoption. The thing that we're seeing increase is the integration of Chainlink, implementation of Chainlink by enterprises of various sizes. And those enterprises tend to basically have off-chain deals that are related to all those different aspects of integration, implementation, maintenance, support, and other key factors for enabling them to adopt the Chainlink standard. Now, I think it's great that these enterprises are adopting the Chainlink standard in and of itself, because it feeds the network effect and the overall growth of the Chainlink as a standard and the Chainlink network as a system that you want to put your data in, or that you want to connect your chain to, or that you want to do compliance with, and so on. But there have been these questions about, hey, what happens to all of this enterprise adoption, how does it relate back to the system? And so that's the question we felt it was a good time to answer, because that enterprise adoption is increasing. So we didn't want to just continue to see this big increase in enterprise adoption without having some kind of clear answer. I feel this is now a very clear answer to that question. And it's not even just an answer, it's actually a working live implementation, which is the way that Chainlink tends to do many of its things, and the way it tends to approach just relating to users and to the world in general, is we tend to put things out there when they're working and when they're available. So this is not just an idea that we're putting out, this is the live working implementation of both on-chain revenue going through the payment abstraction layer, as well as off-chain revenue going through the payment abstraction layer. That's really the second key factor, is the readiness of that service and the readiness of the payment abstraction layer to ingest and convert both payment on chain as well as payment off chain. And importantly, what that does is it can actually take the payment when it's not paid in Link and convert it into Link. But I'm sure we'll discuss that.
Yeah, if we want to pull that graphic back up from before, it kind of does operate as, I think, maybe fair to say, like a middleman between the on-chain and off-chain revenue and the Chainlink Reserve, right? When it comes to the payment abstraction layer, is that how you would characterize its role in the reserve, or how would you look at that based off what you just mentioned?
So the payment abstraction layer is really the place where we're now able to accept revenue and payment of fees in various forms of payment. So you basically can pay for Chainlink implementation, integration, maintenance, and support via the off-chain revenue track. And there you can pay in traditional currencies, bank transfers, various forms of payment. Then you have the on-chain revenue, which the payment abstraction layer has already enabled payment in tokens other than Link. And what this means is that the friction and the ease, the friction to pay is reduced, the ease to pay is increased. So it's just a lot easier for enterprises, for various on-chain contracts to pay for Chainlink services. And in the Chainlink payment abstraction layer, it converts all of those various forms of payment into Link. So the effect is basically the same of if they paid in Link or if they didn't pay in Link. There are definitely discounts applied to being paid in Link, but at the end of the day, we don't need to create friction for enterprises or for on-chain contracts to pay for the system. You want them to pay in whatever they're comfortable paying in, and then you want to be able to convert that into Link and then use that Link for various important purposes, paying the nodes, putting it into the reserves, growing the system in various ways. But the payment abstraction layer is actually a pretty unique thing that many systems don't have. Otherwise, they would be able to accept payment in various forms as well.
Right. You also have brought up enterprises, and I feel like that is a big factor and facet to the Chainlink network. Are you seeing a lot of growth in the adoption of Chainlink by enterprises? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I definitely am seeing a lot of growth in the last few years in terms of enterprise adoption of Chainlink. Enterprises of various sizes are, I think, starting to see the value of highly reliable data, highly reliable connectivity, now compliance, and also the Chainlink runtime environment, I think, is something they're going to find even more valuable, because they have these problems of how to build the smart contracts in more advanced ways. And that's a really unsolved, difficult problem. So I think the amount of enterprise adoption has grown over the last few years. That has definitely led to more off-chain revenue. And so we thought it was the right thing to put out a program that relates to that off-chain revenue in some way, and to create clarity around that. But I do also personally see enterprise adoption of Chainlink increasing into the future because of all of the new thoughts from regulators, the government, and what a positive environment that's created. One good example from the recent couple of weeks has been the stablecoin bill, where Chainlink is the largest provider of proof of reserves, which means that if you want to prove the reserves of your stable coin or your gold coin, you're basically going to come to Chainlink and say, hey, how do I make sure that the market knows that my reserves are there? And then there's a fully built system for that. And that's the case for many of these different use cases. I think generally the tokenization trend and the tokenization boom is going to require a lot, if not all, of the Chainlink kind of services and standards working together to really reach its full potential. Because you need to tokenize things in a way that you prove things about them, you have data about them, you need to move them across chains, you need to prove compliance. All these things are done by Chainlink and no other system.
Yeah. On that note, Sergey, what do you think is one unique thing that Chainlink offers to enterprises that others in the industry don't offer in comparison?
I think it's the reliability and the security of Chainlink. Chainlink has enabled over $22 trillion in transaction value. All the other systems have gotten nowhere close to that do anything similar to Chainlink. So the security and reliability is definitely a key property that, by the way, enterprises value to an extreme degree, and to, in many cases, an even greater degree than public chain teams or companies. Then I would say it's the fact that blockchain transactions are becoming increasingly complex, in that they don't just require one chain, they don't just require a private key to sign a transaction. They require multiple chains, multiple pieces of data. They require compliance information. They require connectivity across chains. They require integration into existing standards and systems like ISO 20022 standards. Just this week, I was at a conference for Blockchain Rio, speaking virtually with one of our large enterprise collaboration partners, Banco Inter, basically one of the biggest banks in Latin America, where we collaborated with them and with the Central Bank of Brazil. And that implementation required multiple parts of Chainlink to work. So you needed the CCIP cross-chain standard interoperability protocol. You needed CRE, the Chainlink Runtime environment. You needed a number of different pieces from the Chainlink stack to be used at the same time. And the simple reality is that no other system right now has all of these building blocks in one system. You can't go to a data oracle and have it solve bridging for you as well. You can't go to a bridging oracle and have it solve data. You can't go to some other oracle and have it solve bridging and data and whatever it does. But you can come to Chainlink and have all your problems solved, and have all those problems solved in a highly integrated way, where all the different parts of your transaction and your system now work together correctly, because the cross-chain part can work with the compliance part, and the data part can work with the other piece of your contract, that all need to be integrated holistically. So that platform capability is really valuable, especially to enterprises, because they generally don't want to onboard 15 different vendors or providers. They just want to solve their problem. And that's also why you see cloud providers like AWS and others become really popular. It's because when you adopt them, you adopt a multitude of solutions rather than just one. And so what I'm seeing more and more is that the Chainlink community and Chainlink solutions architects and consultancies that have adopted Chainlink and have practices where they implement Chainlink for these enterprises are able to come in and basically make really complex transactions work across chains, utilizing various forms of data, complying with various regulations in different jurisdictions, and they're able to do all of that within the Chainlink platform, all at once.
Yeah, that's huge. And I feel like that alleviates a lot of the stress and burden on their end by using the technology that you guys bring, right?
Yeah, it definitely cuts down the implementation time, and cutting down that implementation time and accelerating your time to market as an enterprise is going to become an increasingly important property of any technology or standard that you adopt. So if Chainlink can take your timeline from 6 months to 6 weeks, or your timeline of 6 weeks down to 6 days, that's really valuable, especially in an environment where tokenization and adoption of international financial flows starts to rely on blockchains. So
Yep.
that time to market will be a key factor that I think Chainlink will excel at enabling.
Yeah, 100%. Sergey, you also brought up the Chainlink runtime environment. Can you kind of explain what is that and the role that it'll play in Chainlink's adoption too?
Sure. The Chainlink runtime environment is really the next generation of Chainlink. It's the bottom of this graphic you have here. It's the thing that eventually the vast majority of all Chainlink services will run on. Right now, we've gotten to a place where Chainlink provides so many different services and standards to make those complex blockchain transactions work that if you come to Chainlink to get some data, you realize Chainlink provides you interoperability, you adopt interoperability, then you realize you need compliance in order to make interoperability work, so you adopt Chainlink compliance. Then you realize Chainlink has privacy features, so you adopt those. So basically, one after the other, you have greater and greater adoption of Chainlink services, and you have greater and greater adoption of your contract working on many chains with many pieces of data and many different compliance systems. What's really needed now is actually an orchestration layer, what we kind of call the meta layer in our 2.0 white paper, but now has become more or less the Chainlink runtime environment, and is essentially the orchestration layer where all of these Oracle networks, services, chains are woven together into a single application. Because a smart contract application or a DApp or a decentralized application or whatever we're calling it this year basically has expanded in what it is about. It is now about multiple chains, multiple data sources, multiple systems, all working together. And Chainlink gives you all those inputs and outputs. It gives you all those chains in a single orchestration layer now. So if you had to write 15, 20 pieces of code before, now you need to write one piece of code. At the end of the day, all of this blockchain complexity, all of these services that need to work together, all of this data, all of this connectivity across chains, all of this integration with existing systems and standards like ISO 20022 and others has to be managed somewhere. There has to be a place that orchestrates and manages all of these different systems in their relationship with each other to build you a next generation enterprise smart contract. That's what the Chainlink runtime environment does. It powers the services as the better and new infrastructure layer powering the next generation of Chainlink services. But because it powers the services, all the services are already there. And now all you need is a place to write code. And that's the other thing CRE gives you. It gives you an environment in which you can write code that orchestrates your application's relationship to many different chains, many different Oracle networks, many different existing systems, many different existing data sources that you need to rely on. And so now instead of having 15, 20 different pieces of code doing different things in different places, you're able to write one piece of code, and you can now even also show that piece of code to someone else, like a counterparty, and assure them that your contract is going to work in a certain way, not only on chain A or B, but across chain A or B, or in relation to specific data, or in relation to specific compliance requirements, which is really what the new definition of a smart contract is. It's this more advanced next generation enterprise smart contract.
Okay, last thing, Sergey, I would love to know, obviously we've covered a lot of ground during this conversation, but what are your thoughts on what will happen next with our industry? What role will RWA, tokenization, et cetera, play? And of course, what role will Chainlink play in all of this?
I think the tokenization boom will fundamentally redefine our industry because the amount of value in our industry will go from being predominantly cryptocurrencies to predominantly other tokenized things. Tokenized equities, commodities, funds, various tokenized things. Stablecoins are just the beginning of this. And I personally feel that with the new stablecoin legislation that was recently passed, we can see stablecoins going from 2 or 300 trillion to 2 or 300
Brilliant,
billion to 2 or 3 trillion. And then that'll create an even bigger market for the tokenization of everything else. And this tokenization boom will really start kicking off in earnest when you see that few $1 trillion worth of stable coins, essentially on-chain cash, being exchanged for a few $1 trillion worth of other tokenized things like equities, commodities, and funds. And then I think everyone in the capital markets and in the traditional finance world will realize the power of our industry's technology for clearing and settlement, collateral management, efficiency, security, reliability, and various other key factors that are important for them to operate well, make money, and succeed. If that really happens and everyone starts seeing that tokenized cash is better than traditional payments, and that tokenized equities, commodities, and funds are better than traditional equities, commodities, and funds, then I think you'll have a second wave, a second big stage of tokenization, where you'll see mass adoption of tokenization into the tens of trillions. And at that point, our industry will be completely redefined by tokenization. Chainlink's role in all this is as a critical infrastructure that enables that tokenization to happen, that enables the tokens to move across chains, that enables data to flow, that enables compliance to happen, that enables a massive number of critical operations, like some of the ones that you showed in the diagram before explaining the Chainlink stack. And without all of that data, connectivity, systems integration, compliance, integration with AI systems for risk modeling, tokenization would go very slowly and it wouldn't provide nearly as much value. But with Chainlink and its ability to provide accurate data, connect across chains, enable compliance, enable integration with existing systems while maintaining privacy, all of those things I think are key accelerating factors for those two big waves of tokenization I described. So we've already seen Chainlink power the majority of DeFi now for over 5 years. We've seen that greatly benefit DeFi and help it grow into a multi-$100 billion industry from less than $100 million. And my hope now is that this big next wave of tokenization can also be something powered by all these different Chainlink services, Chainlink standards, and eventually managed and orchestrated through the CRE, the Chainlink Runtime environment. Because that is ideally the place that's the simplest, most secure, most reliable, most comprehensive platform for you to enable tokenization, make it go cross-chain, make it work with data, make it work with compliance. So I think that the tokenization boom, the real-world asset boom that we're now in the process of entering, that's getting kicked off by greater and greater stablecoin adoption as a form of payment, is something that is going to be a historic change for our industry that I'm hopeful that Chainlink can have a large role in, and I think it will have a large role in as critical infrastructure.
Yeah, there's a lot of room and opportunities for Chainlink to grow on that side, and there's definitely a lot to keep up with on this front. I feel like we're going to have another conversation. Sergey, thank you again for taking the time to talk today, and congrats to the team and the Link community on the new reserve.
My pleasure. Great chatting with you. Thank you.